Hey everyone, and welcome back to one of these. Let's jump on the trend and make a tier list or something to that effect. Welcome back to one of these kinds of videos. I don't know how long I'm going to run this series for. I am still doing this both ironically and unironically, and frankly, I'll eventually run out of stuff that I'm interested in making tier lists out of. But for those of you that don't know, I am a big fan of the NFL. I follow it very closely. It's the only sport that I follow that closely. I like other sports, but I don't follow them nearly as much as I do the NFL. And so I figured, hey, why don't we take a look at a tier where we rank all of the starting quarterbacks in the NFL? Now, obviously, this is a little outdated because we've got Josh Rosen here, and he is, as far as we know, he might be he should be the starting quarterback. Ryan Fitzpatrick might beat him out for the job. We don't really know yet. I guess we can assume that he's going to be the starting quarterback for now, though, for the sake of this video. So we're gonna go ahead and do this because I thought it would be fun and interesting. I'm basing it also on, how I feel they are now, not career wise, because then you'd have all the old guys at the top, all of the new guys at the bottom, because the new guys haven't had a chance to prove themselves yet. So I'm basing this off of mainly talent and skill, based on where I feel they stand in those regards now. So that's how we're going to do this. Of course, get yourself prepared to yell at me in the comment section if that's what you want to do. So we're going to start with, I guess we should start with Patrick Mahomes, huh? Quarterback of the Kansas City Chiefs. I'm going to put him in the A tier. He did win MVP last season, but that was one season. He's started at quarterback for one season, I believe. I don't think he played any more than that in the starting role. But it's been one season. I'll give him an A because he won an MVP award, and majority of these quarterbacks on here have never won an MVP award, but gonna hold off on putting him in the S tier because I want to see if he's proven, and it wasn't just like a fluke or something to that effect. Phillip Rivers, I am going to throw into the A tier as well. Only thing holding me back from putting him in the S tier is the fact that, his team has not won a Super Bowl while he's played, while he has been the quarterback for the team. Whether or not that is his fault is, of course, subjective, up in the air. You could debate it all you want, but if we're looking at it from that angle, I know I said at the beginning talent and skill were the main factors here, and that those do play a role in me putting him in the A tier. But on top of that, he doesn't have any rings. I do believe that he is underrated, when it comes to the discussion of top tier quarterbacks in the NFL, but I don't think he is that S tier. I don't think he's up there. So I will put him here along with Pat Mahomes. We've got, I believe this is Case Keenum, right? I think so. It looks like Case Keenum. I don't know why I can't see. No, this is Case Keenum. The hell is this then? This is this is Case Keenum. No, wait a minute. Hold on a minute. You know what? Let me look up what Case Keenum looks like because I want to make sure I get this right. Because if that one of those two is definitely Case Keenum, let me tell you. Case Keenum. Right, it's this guy. Okay, this is Case Keenum. So, this is Jared Goff. Yeah, that's his name. Why am I blanking? I was talking myself like, ooh, I know so much about football. Can't even remember the names of these guys. But Case Keenum, I'm going to put him in the C tier. I don't think he's bottom of the barrel. Don't think he's really that good either. He had that one season, I think it was with the Vikings, where he was playing relatively well. Other than that, whole lot of nothing. He's had plenty of opportunities to prove himself, I think, and he really hasn't. He's proven that he can be a serviceable backup, but other than that, I don't really even think he's fit to be a starter on a team unless you're really, unless you really need somebody. But he's on this list, so I'll throw him in there. Derek Carr, I am going to put in the B tier. I think he is better than people give him credit for, but at the same time, he checks down a lot. Not very accurate on the deep balls. And, he has always looked, at least to me, like a very middle-of-the-road quarterback, which can be fine in the NFL depending on the team you have around you, but the Raiders have not built a very strong team around him. So, we'll see this season whether or not that's different, but, that's why the team has done so poorly over the past couple of seasons is, you have a middle-of-the-road quarterback and then you don't really have much of a team around him. So it's, it's difficult to win games that way. So I would put him there. I think that he is fine as a starting quarterback. Wouldn't exactly be too keen on him being my starting quarterback, but, if that's who you have, I think you can roll with him for a little while anyway. I definitely don't think he's a franchise quarterback, but then again, I'm not in a coaching position. I'm not in a managing position. So, I'm just a fan, who is, who's ranking them based on, what he has seen watching various football games over the years, so I don't have as much intellect as maybe, or insight as some other people, but, Eli, I'm going to put him in the B tier. Maybe a little high for some people, but I don't think he is nearly as bad as people give him credit for, or as people say he is. He is definitely an all right quarterback. I don't think he's as good now as he was before, but if you look at, even if you look at last season, he statistically was not that far behind from some of the better quarterbacks in the league, and of course stats don't tell the whole story, but when people are painting him as like one of the worst quarterbacks in the league, I don't really see it as factual because, the statistics say otherwise. And if you watch him in a game, he's not going to lose you a game. He might not win you the game, but he's not going to lose you the game. So, I think B tier is perfectly fine for him. Also, I just noticed that Blake Bortles is on here and he is not a starting quarterback anymore. So whatever, that's fine. I don't think there are 32 quarterbacks actually in here. I think there's a bit more than that. But I'm not going to take the time to count because I don't care. So here we go. Alex Smith, I'm going to put him. I'm going to put him in the B tier. I was tempted to put him in the A tier, but then you look at who's already in there, and I think he is surely in the better half of the B tier. I think he is definitely up there. He's very close to the border between B and A tier, but I think there was one season where he was kind of going off a little bit. I think he was playing with the Chiefs at that time, but he was playing really well. But other than that, he's been he's a very conservative quarterback. He's not going to throw a lot of picks at all throughout the year, which is good, but he's not going to throw a lot of touchdown passes either. It's kind of what you get for being such a conservative quarterback, for not, taking risks a lot of the time, and he's not going to do that. Hence why I'm going to keep him in the B tier. I don't think he is up here in this upper echelon of quarterbacks. Nick Foles, I'm going to put him in the C tier, right there with Case Keenum. I don't think he is that great of a quarterback, and frankly, I don't think he is good enough to be a starter. But, he's proven himself a couple of times throughout his career that he is a decent quarterback, a somewhat decent quarterback. I just personally do not think that he is fit to be a starter in the long term. I think he can have a couple of games where he goes off and he, throws 7 touchdown passes in one game. But, I don't think that he is, if you're looking for somebody to build a team around, I don't think he's your guy. It mainly is just because, you get those games from him once in a blue moon, but then almost every other time it's, he's not exactly doing much of anything really, so it's kind of like of course those high statistic games, throw for 7 touchdowns, over 400 yards, et cetera, et cetera. Obviously, those are going to get a lot of attention over the mediocre games that he has, but he has way more mediocre games than he does good games. So I think he is worthy of the C tier here. Carson Wentz, I'm going to throw into the B tier. We haven't gotten to see a whole lot of him over the past couple of seasons. He's been injured on and off. Hopefully, I think, depending on how this season goes, he can either head up to the A tier, down to the C tier. We'll see what happens. But I think he's a good quarterback. I just, with his injury issues recently, you can't really gauge how he is now. It's kind of like you're looking really to like 2 seasons ago, or even further back, and you're kind of basing how he plays now and what kind of quarterback he is now on his play from a couple of years ago, and that it really isn't like that good of an indicator. You have to see him play now to kind of really gauge it. But if we're basing it off of how he played a couple of years ago, I think he is definitely a B tier quarterback, borderline A tier quarterback. Whether or not he can maintain that level of play is questionable, but we'll see. We'll see this coming season. Dak Prescott, quarterback of the Cowboys, I'm going to put him in the B tier. I think he's in the lower half of the B tier. He's proven that he can be a serviceable starter, and that he is worthy of a starting position, I think, with the Cowboys. But I don't think that he, and he has time, he's young, of course, but I don't think that he is anywhere close to being an elite quarterback or in the rankings of the top tier quarterbacks. And I mean, he's going to win you some games. He's not really going to lose you games, but he, if we're looking at it statistically, he's not doing a whole lot of anything, like he's playing well, but he's not putting up numbers like Phillip Rivers is, or Drew Brees is, or any of those guys are. And, like when I look at all of these guys in the B tier, I think he definitely fits in this group, just based on who you're comparing him to in the same tier. I think he definitely fits in with this group as well. So that's where I would put him. Granted, I haven't seen a whole lot of Cowboys games, but based on what I have seen, I think I would lump him in there, and I don't think, it would be that much, that controversial to put him in the B tier, but we'll see. Mitch Trubisky, going to put him in the C tier. I don't think he's that great of a quarterback. Again, he's young, like Dak. He has time to prove himself, but I don't think that as of right now he is worth anything above the C tier. He doesn't play. He hasn't played all that well. He's been fine, I think, for the Bears. Whether or not I think he's worthy of being a starter is kind of like, because he's young. You don't really know what you're getting out of him just yet. But, based on his current play, I would say no. But young quarterback, still on his rookie contract. You got to give him time to see where he really is at. And then, based on where that is, you can go from there. But right now, I would put him in the C tier. Josh Allen, I would also put in the C tier. Again, young guy, needs to prove himself. We're going off of one season of play. And based on that season, he was definitely a C-tier quarterback. Granted, he did not have a lot of weapons around him. He did not have a good O-line, for sure. So he was working with a whole lot of nothing, really. And the same can be said for like Josh Rosen, even Mitch Trubisky to some extent. He had the defense obviously helping him out, but offensively there wasn't a whole lot going on there. So it's kind of hard to gauge where they should sit, because obviously if they had better weapons, they would probably play better. But when you don't have much of anything to work with, it's hard to work with it. So I think just basing it off of his play, though, I think it's fine to put him in the C tier. I think that's where he belongs. But we'll see where he goes from here. Kirk Cousins, I'm going to put in the B tier. He fits in perfectly with this group, I think. It's hard to say what you're going to get out of him. I think if you had asked me maybe 2 seasons ago where to put him, I would maybe put him in the A tier. Just because, he was he was carrying the Redskins to wins, single-handedly. And then he goes to the Vikings and he plays well his first season there. And then last season, they fell way short of expectations, and part of that was on him. He didn't play nearly as well as he had been playing in the past. And so it's, I think if the last season had not happened, I think he goes into the A tier, but since it did happen, I think you got to put him in here. I don't think you can, I don't think you can put him in the A tier and not feel any remorse for doing it. So I'm going to put him in the B tier, and I feel perfectly fine with that. Aaron Rodgers, S tier, 100%. If we're going based off of talent and skill, he is definitely top tier. Frankly, I think he is the best quarterback in the league from a talent and skill perspective. Better than Drew Brees, better than Tom Brady, better than anybody else on this list. I know we're spewing loads of hot takes here. These tier lists are gold mines for hot takes. Or what are perceived to be hot takes. Anyway, I definitely think he is the best quarterback in the league from those specific respects. Obviously, he doesn't have the rings to really show for it. He has one, but talent, skill definitely puts him in the S tier at the very least. Whether or not he's the best quarterback in the league, you can debate that all you want, but he's definitely an S tier quarterback. Matt Stafford, I'm going to put him in the A tier. Maybe a little controversial, but based on the entirety of his career, and I know I said we weren't doing that, but hear me out here. Based on how he has played consistently throughout his career, he hasn't been the issue on the Lions, and I don't think he was the issue on the Lions last season either. It's a lot of him not having weapons. He did have Megatron for some time, but recently he has not had great weapons around him. Their receiving core is good, but their O-line isn't great. They don't have. They drafted a tight end and they signed a tight end in the in free agency, but they haven't had tight ends. Haven't really had consistent running backs either up until recently, like very recently. So he hasn't had a terrible amount to work with. He's had more than maybe, say, some of these younger guys on the list. But, he despite all of that, though, he consistently puts out a relatively high amount of, he constantly produces. You never really hear about him playing terribly. He is a little bit of a gunslinger, and he'll throw some picks from time to time. But, I definitely think he is one of the, I don't want to say top starting quarterbacks in the league, but he's definitely, I would put him top 10, I think. I definitely would put him top 10. Obviously, we'll see how the rest of this list plays out. Maybe I'll eat my words there, but I think he's like 9, 10, something like that in the top 10 in terms of quarterbacks. Drew Brees, absolutely got to put him in the S tier. I would rank him second behind Aaron Rodgers in terms of talent and skill. And he certainly does have the stats to show for it. Again, the rings, 1 ring, whether or not he's the best quarterback in the league, again, up in the air. Definitely worthy of S tier, though, hands down, no questions asked. Matt Ryan, I'm going to put him in the A tier. Don't think he's worthy of being in the S tier because, I don't think he's had consistent enough production in order to get himself there, especially early on in his career. Of course, the past few seasons he's played really well, but his team hasn't exactly played well. And there have been times where he has shown flashes of being an S-tier quarterback, but he kind of stays in his lane a little bit. And, when I look at this group, I don't think he's an odd one out at all. I think he's better than Matt Stafford for sure, but I think it's a little, I think it's way too out there to peg him as an S-tier quarterback. And it helps to have the likes of Julio Jones catching balls for you too. Not that is the reason he is successful or plays as well as he does, but it certainly helps. Jameis Winston, I'm going to put him in the D tier. Pretty atrocious quarterback. I'm surprised that he continues to get chances. He lost his job to Ryan Fitzpatrick, which, Fitzmagic happens, but he lost his job to Ryan Fitzpatrick multiple times. Hasn't really shown any progression from when he came into the league. In fact, I think he's declined since he came into the league. I don't think he's worthy of being a starting quarterback at all. I think he would be fine as a backup, but definitely not worthy of being a starter. Cam, I'm going to put him in the A tier. He is the best mobile quarterback in the league right now. And he is extremely versatile as well. He can throw a 60-yard bomb, or he can leg one out for a 20-yard scramble, something like that. He can do just about anything. And he has had to do quite a bit for his team as well. The Panthers would be a bottom-of-the-barrel team, or would have been a bottom-of-the-barrel team without him at quarterback. He does a lot for that team. And now that they're finally starting to get some pieces together, I think maybe they can make a playoff push this year. We'll see what happens. But he's definitely up there in terms of quarterbacks. I would put him in my top 10 as well. Whether or not in front or behind of Matt Stafford, don't really know. But I think he's definitely up there. Jared Goff, I'm going to put in the B tier. He has an insane amount of talent around him, and he's had an insane amount of talent around him. So it's made him play relatively well. It's hard to say, how good he actually is, though. Again, he's young, still on his rookie contract, I think. I think you need more time to really see what kind of player he is, how good he actually is, because he's had so many weapons around him. Not from when he started, not from the beginning, but recently he's had a lot of weapons around him. So I feel like it maybe has inflated his ability and his skill a little bit, but I think he's definitely worthy of being in the B tier. I don't think he's an A tier or S tier quarterback at all. Of course, we'll see what happens this season, but Jimmy Garoppolo, I think you got to put him in the C tier just because you have no idea what he's going to be like as a quarterback, as a starting quarterback. He played, 7 games in, not last season, but the season before he started, and they won a bunch, and he played well. But, then he was out for most of last season. So you really have no idea, again, what you're getting out of him. And I think he's a fine quarterback. Would I say he is worthy of being a starter? I don't know, because you haven't seen him play enough to really know. But, I think for that reason alone, he's got to be in the C tier. Don't think you can put him in the D tier because he has played well when he has played, but you haven't seen him play enough to really know what he is like. So I think you got to keep him in the C tier. Russell Wilson. I tell you what, I'm going to put him in the S tier. And the big reason being is that he has carried that team many times before. I mean, obviously they had the Legion of Boom. They had an amazing defense a few seasons ago, but he carried that team to a playoff berth last year. Everybody thought the Seahawks were rebuilding, but he propelled that team to a playoff berth last season. And, he did that a lot, mainly by himself, He's had Doug Baldwin, Jimmy Graham, but he hasn't had great weapons around him. Certainly not in the running back position. And he hasn't had a great offensive line either. He's actually had a pretty terrible offensive line for a while. But he's able to do a lot with his feet like Cam is. He's, not really much more to say, other than the fact that he got them to the playoffs last year. And I think, if your team is supposed to be rebuilding and you can get your team to the playoffs while they're quote unquote trying to rebuild, I think you're definitely worthy of being in the S tier. Sam Darnold, got to put him in the C tier. Again, young guy, don't really know what he's like. Got to wait and see. Josh Rosen, kind of the same thing. Didn't have a whole lot of weapons in Arizona at all. Had a horrible offensive line as well. He showed flashes of being good, but you need more time to really gauge where he's at. We'll see how he plays this year, if he even wins the starting job from Ryan Fitzpatrick. We'll see. Baker, I think he definitely played the best out of... he was a rookie last year, wasn't he? Yes, he was. I'm trying to remember exactly. But I think he played the best out of any of the rookie quarterbacks last year. Again, you need more time to see where he's at, but I think him playing better than every other rookie quarterback warrants him being in the B tier. Of course, we'll see where he goes from here, but I think that's a fair ranking. Deshaun Watson, it's hard to say because part of me wants to put him in the A tier, but another part of me feels strongly that he belongs in the B tier, at least for now. Again, it's hard to say. He's been injured periodically. His rookie season, he played really well for when he did play. But, last season, to be honest, I didn't get to pay attention to the Texans maybe as much as I should have. But, based on what I have heard and what I have read about and everything like that, I think he had a relatively average season. So it's difficult to really gauge him too, because he's young. You don't exactly know what you're getting out of him yet. I definitely think he is worthy of being a starter, but I need more time to really see, if he belongs in the A tier. And I think if I'm unsure of putting somebody in the A tier, then I shouldn't put them in that tier or any tier for that matter. Ryan Tannehill, he's had plenty of opportunities to prove himself. Hasn't, the running meme and joke, I guess, is, Dolphins fans saying every year, this is Tannehill's breakout year. Never happened. Granted, he had some injuries that kind of plagued him a little bit. But now he's going to go be a backup in Tennessee to Marcus Mariota. I think that in of itself kind of sums up where he is as a quarterback and how he is as a quarterback if you're backing up Mariota, who I don't think is that great of a quarterback either. So there you go. Lamar Jackson, I think definitely needs more time to see where he is at. He didn't play all that great last season, but then again, he came in middle of the season for Joe Flacco, and they won games. They won the division. So it's difficult to see where he is really at, whether or not he is legitimately good or what, but we'll see what happens. Ben Roethlisberger, I'm going to put him in the A tier. I think he's definitely in the top 10, top 5, up in the air. Quarterbacks in the NFL. He played extremely well. He didn't play extremely well last season, but he played well last season despite his team not making the playoffs. He had very high volume stats, which can inflate his numbers and make him look better. But, I'm a Steelers fan. I watched him play every game, and he looked spotty in some games, but he definitely still looked like an A-tier quarterback. He's never been an S-tier quarterback, I don't think. He's always been A-tier, maybe even high B-tier. And he looked spotty from time to time, looked streaky a little bit, but he still, played really just about as well as he normally does, which is worthy of being an A-tier or in the A-tier. So I think it's fine putting him in there. Andy Dalton, I think you got to put him in the B tier. I think he's a very average quarterback. They talk about the Dalton line. If you're above it, you're an above average quarterback. If you're below it, you're a below average quarterback. Don't know if that's really the case anymore. I don't know if you can really use that, but I think he is, an average quarterback. And watching the Bengals play at least twice a year against the Steelers, he does play relatively well, I think. So I don't think he's a bad quarterback. I think he's definitely worthy of being a starter. I don't think his situation with the Bengals has been all that great. I think they could have helped him out a bit more. The offensive line hasn't always been fantastic. And he hasn't always had too many weapons outside of A.J. Green. So, he had the ability to be a better quarterback than he turned out to be. But, circumstances kind of didn't really allow that to come to fruition. So, Andrew Luck, I think he's an A-tier quarterback. I think it's going to be interesting to see where his career goes from here. He might move up to an S tier. I think he is a great quarterback. I don't think he's played long enough or played enough to be worthy of being put in the S tier, but he consistently plays really well. He has carried that team before. He carried that team to a playoff berth as well, like Russell Wilson did. Not last year, but although they did make the playoffs last year. That's not what I'm referring to, though. It's before he got injured. He had done it before he got injured. He played well last season after getting injured. I think he's a very good quarterback. Marcus Mariota, I think he is a C-tier quarterback. Not much better than his backup Ryan Tannehill, but better. He showed some signs last year of maybe being good, but he really hasn't put it together yet. And can blame it on the Titans' weapons. They haven't exactly had too many weapons for him, but I think we've started to see enough of him, I think, to the point where it's like, sooner or later something's got to happen with him if he's going to break out or show any sign of being good. And if he doesn't, then you might even need to move on from him. Blake Bortles, D-tier quarterback, 100%. I think he is the worst quarterback out of all three of these guys. Interception machine. He has had plenty of opportunities. And the Jaguars organization had faith in him when nobody else did. And he didn't prove himself. Again, I don't know if you could say that they had a lack of weapons. I think he's definitely fine as a backup. I don't think he is worthy of being a starter, though, at all. And then finally, Tom Brady. Got to put him in the S tier. Greatest quarterback of all time, hands down. Skill-wise and talent-wise, not as good as maybe Aaron Rodgers and Drew Brees, in my opinion. But the stats are there. The consistency is there. The production is there. The rings are there. You got to put him in the So this is my final compiled list of all the starting quarterbacks in the NFL and some that aren't going to be starting anymore. Obviously, we don't have the rookies from this incoming class. It's hard to say where they would go because you haven't seen them play yet. So, we'll see what happens with that. But, for the quarterbacks that were there last season, for the quarterbacks that were starting last season, this is where I would rank them. So, if you disagree with me, if you agree with me, whatever you want to say, comment section is there. If you enjoyed this video, let me know and share it and like it. I intend on doing a couple more videos like this, maybe, depending on what topics I'm interested in and what I find. But if you have any recommendations or suggestions, just definitely let me know down in the comment section, and I will give them consideration, of course. And subscribe to my channel for more, mainly gaming content, but for more content like this as well. And thank you guys very much for tuning in. Really appreciate it. And I will talk to you later.